Hello, hello, hello. We are live on the Fightful Overbooked YouTube channel for another edition of Degrassi Dudes podcast. This is where me and the Spinner Mason to my Jimmy Brooks, Steven Jensen, we chat all about Degrassi, television shows, and everything in between. Jensen, how are you doing this morning?
I'm doing good. Tired as normal, but for a good reason this week. I was at Terminus last night, got back a little after midnight, and then was still on like a high from the show. So like it took me a while to actually fall asleep. I know you know that feeling when you went and you saw something, you had a good time, and I felt really good after the show. Got to meet some people, so that was fun. Got to watch pretty much the whole show with Muscle Man Malcolm. A lot of people know him for his work, and he's done an interview with us at on the Spotlight on Fightful. Really good dude. Hung out for quite a while with Nasty Leroy. Got a quick interview with him after the show. Hung out quite a while with the It's Still Real to Me, damn it guy. He was great. He's an absolute legend. It was funny because of all the people at this show, he was like next to me. And I texted my brother. I was like, dude, the It's Still Real to Me guy, like he's here and he's right next to me. And my brother like doesn't even like wrestling, and he was like, dude, no way, like you're hanging out with that guy? And I was like, yeah. And I was like, I'm gonna get a picture for you. So like I got a picture with him, mainly just for my brother, that I posted it on Twitter. But yeah, it was a really good show. And then I sent you last week who followed me on Twitter last week, so hopefully we can make something happen with that for Degrassi dudes potentially. The Degrassi cast is starting to notice the show, I think, because starting to get a little bit of I don't want to ruin anything or spoil anything or jinx anything. I have not reached out yet because I don't want to seem, I want to play it cool, you know, but
don't want to ruin it right after you get the follow.
Exactly. I didn't want to get the follow and then immediately be like spamming this person with like, hey, I do a Degrassi podcast, blah, blah, blah. But it's in the chamber. So when the time is right, I will reach out. And it couldn't have been a more perfect person for me. So anyways.
Hint.
Yeah. Someone might have been happy with my Degrassi rankings. I'll just put it that way. But we'll see. But it's been cool doing this show. And yeah, yesterday was awesome. And today we have an interview for y'all that we pre-recorded with Amanda Raifman that a lot of y'all probably know from Twitter as K-Fabulous. And she's Canadian and a fan of Degrassi and around the age of myself and SP3. So it was a great conversation. But yeah, how are things going for you today, man?
Oh, it's going well. Started off my morning with some FMC with Jeremy. We discussed a lot of basketball, a lot of Laker-related conversation there. We also discussed our disappointment that there was no new episode of South Park this week. We were both very disappointed by that. Because I think we both agree last week's episode with City People didn't hit as well as the first two episodes, so that was a little bit disappointing. But I'm always happy to be here on a Friday morning, talk Degrassi with you, everyone in the live chat. I see our boy Vala B is in the live chat showing some love. We got Carlos Hernandez. I love this community. We are starting to grow, and we're getting the attention of Degrassi. That's always a fun thing as well.
Yes, and I know JJ, like he's been like binging the show, so like the actual Degrassi show. So like it's cool that we're getting some people to watch it and then come in here and give their thoughts on this stuff. So this has been really cool. I watched the South Park last week. I didn't know there wasn't an episode this week. I was gonna watch it after this. That's a bummer. But the end of last episode was epic, where he's like, "Lame, I live in a hot dog."
Oh yeah, like hot dog, lame. No, that's the one thing I did say about that third episode. Cartman was gold. Just Cartman as a realty agent, just trying to steal all the houses from everybody else, and yeah, he was great. And the music every time they started like promoting one of the houses, like it's got a luxury suite, do 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 do. Like they did, that same song kept playing. It was like that was very cool. But it felt like I think Jeremy put it best. It felt like a lot of other episodes we've seen before, because we've seen the city people invade when they got Whole Foods and do different stuff throughout the years, because it's been 25 seasons. They have done the city people before. They just did another variation of it. And I just don't think it hit the way the last two episodes did, where you kind of got the joke of the episode like midway through, but then everything else was funny in those first two episodes. And then this one, it just didn't hit that way.
Yeah, I don't know if I talked to you about the one from 2 weeks ago, the Tolkien one, but that was really funny because I loved how they framed that. How it was like, we're the problems for thinking that that was his name the whole time for that reason, which was obviously the intended reason the whole time. But they're trying to make you feel bad for knowing that for so long.
They legit retconned Token's name. Like, they legit tried to retcon it the entire episode. The doctor looking looking through the fourth wall. Like, well, why would you think that? I know some of you thought that.
Yeah, like why would his parents name him that? And then everyone at the school except for Stan knows that it's J.R.R. Tolkien. They're all like, who here knew that Tolkien was named after J.R.R. Tolkien? And everyone's hand goes up, and it's like, what?
Well, of course, I just assumed that. It was like, but Carmen, you had the name and you spelled it that way. He was like, oh, I didn't know it had an L.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, so funny. Pop this super chat up here. Vala B, as always, great to see you in the chat.
Yes.
Says, how is it, Degrassi dudes, showing some love in this sucky week? Well, I hope your weekend's better, man, or at least you have a good weekend. Yeah, this week it has been. You could be referring to a lot of different things. I can assume what you're probably referring to in a lot of ways, and yeah, there has been. This week's been freaking nuts for a lot of reasons, and I'll just throw it out there right now. Like, I'm the kind of person that, like, I do not like the idea of war at all. I'm a very peaceful person, although I do so much in like the realm of like combat sports and fighting and those kind of things. But like, that's just competition to me. Like, I don't like seeing people actually hating each other and fighting each other and stuff like that. And just for what it's worth, I hope all that shit gets figured out soon, because I absolutely hate the idea of war and all that. If that is what you're talking about, Wallaby, I'm just kind of assuming that's at least part of it.
Yeah, I definitely probably think he's talking about that, and I definitely agree with what Jensen says. I'm all about peace. I don't want to see people getting hurt. I don't want to see countries being attacked. Like, why do we have to live in this type of world? Unfortunately, we have some people that don't feel the same way as us. But I hope that the people watching this show is here to kind of escape all of that, and we can have some fun, talk about Degrassi, and make you not think about the sucky week that there's been. But we appreciate you, Vala B, showing some love during these hard times for a lot of people out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much, Vala B. And I appreciate you not just here, but I'm always seeing you in the Fightful chats and stuff. Like, we appreciate you, man. Yeah, he's all over the place, man. I mean, out there supporting, which it really means a lot. And that's for anybody. If anybody sends any super chats, we will make sure, as always, to put them up on the screen. We are currently looking for some sponsorships here on Degrassi Dudes. So if y'all have any ideas, or anybody that you know or anyone watching this is interested in some cheap advertising, we're not going to charge a whole lot, and it might be a cool way to just kind of get involved in the Fightful overbooked kind of ecosphere. So if I'm just throwing that out there into the world, I'm going to start contacting people soon and seeing what's out there. But it's a little different because I'm so used to, I have sponsors involved with a lot of my stuff, but it's like wrestling and fighting and like, stuff that kind of with that. This is a bit different with being Degrassi, but it's still on the Fightful platform. So like, we'll figure something out that works for a sponsor, something that works out for us. But once again, if anybody in the chat has anyone in mind, please feel free to reach out, or, DM me on Twitter, or just at me on Twitter at fight talk _ or hit up SP3, True Heel SP3. But yeah, we're looking to just keep rolling with the show, and we got a lot to go still. I mean, we're covering a pretty heavy episode today, and that leaves us with like 1,000 other episodes we still haven't covered. So there's so much to get to on this show. So this is really just the beginning of all of it, and we appreciate everybody who's with us so far. We really, really do. Anything else that you want to talk about real quick before we show the interview with Amanda?
All I will say is the same thing I've been saying to Jensen every week for the past 3 weeks. He needs to watch Bel Air. Bel Air is like, I really, really like this show. Like, I really get it now. Like, at first I was like, this is weird. These are the characters I know and love, and they're not the same, but this is them in a 2022 kind of realistic kind of point of view. So I very much enjoy it, and I suggest anyone who's not watching Bel Air give it a try, because even my significant other, who genuinely doesn't like any of the things I watch, you know, she doesn't like nowadays professional wrestling. She likes the old school stuff, not current wrestling. It doesn't matter the promotion, she doesn't care for it. Power she couldn't get into, but this right here, she was like, Bel Air, I like this. She was like, this is my vibe. So if I can convince her to watch it, a lot of y'all should too.
Nice. Oh yeah, I definitely intend to. I've seen enough about it that I'm definitely interested. I might do the thing though where like once they all come out, I'll just spam it's not
That's
spam.
smart.
Just binge everything. Because I'm doing the same thing right now for what there's something else that's airing right now. The Pam and Tommy thing.
I still haven't started watching that. I need to.
Yeah, me either. I think they're like 5 episodes in, and I think they're doing a total of like 6 or 8 or something. Like it's not too much longer. So I'm waiting till that's over, and then I'm just gonna watch all of them. My main claim to fame with this was I avoided everything that had to do with Breaking Bad until the show ended, and then I watched the whole thing in like 3 days, like the entire series. I like doing the binge watching thing if I can. Now, Mighty Ducks Game Changers was different. I stayed up till literally the morning to watch those because of just the Mighty Ducks fandom. But
that's me with Power.
Oh, okay.
I wait to, because it drops on Saturday at midnight because the episode airs on Sunday night. But I wait till midnight and I'll turn on my Power. I start watching.
Yeah, there you go. So I'm trying to think if there's anything like worth talking about that I watched this week, just to give a shout out to. I did watch Major League 2 for the first time since I was a kid the other day, because I watched the original a couple months ago. And it's wild because like the original is rated R and the sequel is PG. So like, yeah, I know, I was surprised too. So like, and it made sense as I was watching it. It's like a very nerfed version of Major League, but there's still enough stuff like, and once again, I'm not like defending all this. I just need to preface it. We talk a lot about like, words that were used and stuff that was done back in like the 90s or the 80s or the 70s or whatever. And it sounds like kind of like almost like a blanket statement or a cop out to be like, well, times have changed. But it's like that legitimately is true. Even when you watch a movie like Major League 2, most of the language or a lot of the language they use wouldn't even be allowed. Like it'd be probably an R-rated movie just based off some of the words they use in that movie that like were okay to use back in the 90s. And once again, not that this is like illegal or anything, but like all these people are like smoking cigarettes everywhere and stuff. And it's like, I don't care if people smoke cigarettes. That's on you if you want to do that. But now it's like you would never have a PG movie where like the main characters are standing around smoking cigarettes and stuff. You just wouldn't, because like they'd be promoting cigarettes to kids because it's a PG movie. You know what I mean? So it's just little things like that I keep in mind when I watch old stuff, and I'm like, man, times have changed a lot. And it just kind of puts it in perspective when I watch that kind of stuff. Like one of my favorite movies ever is the original Bad News Bears, and that's a PG movie, and that would not be allowed to be made in 2021. Like there are kids dropping N-bombs in that, and they're insane. I mean, but it was like the 70s or whatever. So like, and once again, this wasn't okay, but it was like, this is a PG movie that like literally would not be allowed to be. It would be beyond rated R right now. Like
different world we're staying in. Even the episode we're talking about today, I don't know if like a network television or Nick or Team Nick today would play Time Stand Still. Like, it's even different from like 15 years ago, regardless, even talking about like you're talking about 40, 50 years ago, like even 15, 10 years ago, a lot of the television that we watched when we were younger wouldn't be accepted nowadays.
Yeah, this one might be viewed as like too controversial, like because it was very controversial even when it happened, but like nowadays especially, like yeah, it's definitely a heavy episode, but yeah. So that said, Major League 2 was all right. It wasn't terrible, but it was all right. I thought the original was way better. And I have not watched Major League 3 Back to the Minors since I was a kid either. I gotta find it. Well, just the whatever. But yeah, I don't know if there's anything else that I watched this week that's like really worth bringing up. I did rewatch that Crime and Penalties documentary that I told you about a while ago. Did you ever wind up watching that with the hockey team?
No, I still haven't watched it yet.
Dude, it's on Netflix. I could not recommend that any higher to anybody, especially to you, because that's the one that's literally the 17-year-old who is gifted a hockey team because he is that's being funded by the mob. His dad's like this big time mobster. So like he gets a hockey team, and this guy only got into hockey because of the Mighty Ducks, and he was a massive WWF fan. So like it's him literally trying to create like a WWF style hockey team that just beats, like they don't even play hockey most of the time. It's like the puck drops and they just take their gloves off and start fighting the other team. It was more about like surviving than like playing hockey. It was
hardcore
awesome.
Hockey. Absolutely.
Yes, it was so awesome. So I rewatched that the other day too. I think it's like an hour and a half long, but it is so good. That's my recommended viewing for USP3. If you got nothing to watch today, like you will thank me for telling you to check this out. Like this is right up your alley.
I gotta watch that and the Kanye documentary on Netflix. I think the only show I'm currently watching is Ozark on Netflix, and that's with my good friend Jimmy Macaram over on his YouTube channel. We do reactions to that show. We just finished our reactions to Peacemaker. What a series! That was like that's arguably one of my favorite series on television that I've seen in recent memory. Like that was so good, so funny, so creative, so original. So yeah, Peacemaker definitely gets an A for me. So that's pretty much the only things I've been watching as of late.
Gotcha. Well, cool. We can jump on into this interview so y'all can see me, SP3, and Amanda. We recorded this earlier this week, and it's about an hour or so long. So me and SP3 are going to disappear for a minute. We'll be keeping an eye on the chat, and we'll be back here afterwards, and then we'll wrap the show up, and then we'll jump over to both of our Twitch channels, and we're going to watch these episodes. So you're going to hear us talk in depth about our feelings on Time Stand Still parts 1 and 2. This is, of course, the episode that is, or the 2-part episode that is infamous because it involves the shooting of Jimmy Brooks, aka Aubrey Graham, aka Drake, and puts him in the wheelchair going forward and stuff. So we'll talk about that right here. You're about to see that conversation, and then once again we'll come back, say goodbye, and then anyone who wants to join us and move on over to our Twitch channels afterwards, we will watch the 2-part episode together. So without any further ado, here is myself, SP3, and Amanda Raifman talking about Degrassi, The Next Generation, Time Stands Still. Hello, everyone. This is the interview portion of this episode of Degrassi Dudes with myself and SP3, and we are joined by Amanda Raifman, K-Fabulous from Twitter, who is not only a Degrassi fan, she is an authentic Canadian joining the show. So we're going to talk about some episodes that she chose, and they are the Time Stand Still episodes where Jimmy famously gets shot, and yeah, big episodes for the show. But before we get into it, how you doing, Amanda? And thanks for joining us on the show.
Oh, I'm doing good. How about you guys? Thanks for having me, by the way.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We're trying to get anyone involved that enjoyed Degrassi growing up, especially. We're getting more people into the show, especially now because like the reboot is happening next year.
Oh, yeah.
So And the timing was kind of perfect. We were already doing the podcast, and then we were a few weeks in, and then this news came out that it was going to be brought back in 2023. So we're like, cool, we already got a Degrassi show, and then maybe next year when everyone's like searching about Degrassi, they'll come across our show when the new show comes out, and then we'll maybe get more people joining in. But it's even better when we get people like you that are in the same boat as me and SP3, where like we're like the age of like the kids that were in this show. So like we were, and we were like high school age kids, like when they were in high school and stuff. So like we have a lot of attachment to the show for a lot of reasons. And even like 20 years later, as like we're talking right now, 25 or 15 years later, whatever it is, it's still like one of those shows that like, if you were into it back in the day, it could have either been a guilty pleasure or your favorite show or whatever, but like it's a show you definitely remember all these years later.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I mean, being from Toronto as well, like me and my friends, we would go and like watch where they were filming it. We would go to the high school all the time. So, and like
so
seeing
awesome.
the characters, like now thinking about it, they weren't like celebrities to us just because like it's a local show. They're from Toronto. We see them all the time downtown. So it wasn't as like a celebrity thing for Torontonians.
We've heard that a few times on this show, like people talking about that if they were from Canada, just like wasn't a big deal. And there were so many people apparently that like lived locally that were a part of the show. Like if you were nearby and they needed like extras or people to do this or that, like, so apparently you meet people all the time. They're like, oh yeah, I worked on Degrassi, or I was on Degrassi.
All the time.
But it became a big thing in the States, mainly, I think, because of like the network it was on at the time when we were in high school, when it was like on the N, which was like the Nickelodeon, like the premium Nickelodeon, kind of, and they used to marathon the show here in the States. So like you'd watch on like a Friday night, and they would air like an entire season straight. So if you got into it, you could just binge. This was basically binge watching before binge watching got like super popular through Netflix. It was like doing this with Degrassi. Same thing for you, right, SP3?
Yeah, that's how it was on like Friday night. It's like episode after episode. I remember I really got into it like the end of season 3, and they just played all the previous seasons, so you were all caught up before season 4 started. So that was just like the perfect thing. But like, how is it for you, like looking back on it, like years later, being from Canada, like how like some people view Degrassi as like this huge thing, and it's kind of like it was kind of like your backyard basically.
Yeah, for me, I never thought of it as such a big thing until I would meet Americans and they would be like knowing all these things about Toronto, and it's only from Degrassi. And that's what they tell me. They're like, oh yeah, it's because I watched Degrassi and I saw this and da 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 da. I was like, oh my God, I guess this show is like bigger than I expected it to be, because for me it was just come home after school, turn on the television, watch an episode of Degrassi, have a snack, do my homework.
That's awesome. That's kind of like it was for us, but like in the US, and just like watching it for like 5 hours straight.
Like it was kind of like that for me being in like New York for like different like reality shows, like the Real World Back to New York. Like when this became big in wrestling, I was like, dude, I used to walk by him on the street when I was like 11, 12 years old when he was on Real World. So like, yeah, I understand that. Like I like that kind of perspective where it's kind of like these people are not that big to you at first, but when you hear it from other people, it becomes bigger.
Yeah, exactly.
And, as we were talking before we started recording, and we're kind of, before we get into the actual episodes, we were talking a little bit about how Drake is, the main focus of the episodes we're going to talk about, because he does get shot by Rick in like one of the most infamous, scenes in the history of the show. But how wild is it, not only being a fan of Degrassi for you, but also, Canadian, and like you like known of this guy for like forever, and now he's like the biggest, most famous person in the world, which is just wild.
Yeah, so like anybody from Toronto knows Drake, but they know him as Aubrey Graham from Degrassi. He was never Drake the rapper, Drake the hottest guy in the world. He was always just Jimmy Edwards or Aubrey, and that's how everybody knew him. So it's wild sometimes to think of like, oh, I remember him as like a kid, as if I knew him, but I didn't. But just watching him on Degrassi, I'm like, oh, remember when he did this and da 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 da, and now he's like rapping everywhere.
Yeah, that's how it is for me too, and I think for SP3 also. Like, no matter how famous Drake gets, he's always gonna be just Jimmy from Degrassi. Like,
Yeah.
And it's still weird to me, as crazy as it is, because I guess at this point he's probably been like quote unquote Drake longer than he was Jimmy, or pretty close. I mean, he was Jimmy on the show for a long time, but now he's been like, at the top of like, the levels of fame that he's been at for like a long time now. But it's it's just bizarre seeing, like, it's still weird to me, as this is gonna sound so weird, but to see him standing eye level or above people, because I got so used to seeing him in the wheelchair for so many years. Like, I'm not even trying to be fun, but I'm serious. Like,
I know.
Because even when you go back and you watch like old episodes of Degrassi, like before he gets shot, and then like you see he's like taller than like most of the other characters, is looking down at people when he's talking to them. But I just have it so in my head that I see him so much in a wheelchair, always from that angle of him looking up at people, that like I'll never, I don't know. It's just something about that. But me and SP3 have also said one of the biggest things they could do for the reboot would be not only to get Drake in for an episode, but if he's walking, like if we find out Jimmy can walk again, that would be like one of the biggest thumbs ups that you can give like a reboot. I think if they did something like that.
I would hope that they get. I mean, it would be stupid of them not to try and at least get Drake to be on that show, but
I think there's a good chance.
He's a busy man.
Yeah, busy man for sure. But I think we were talking about it the other week. Isn't he SP3? He's involved with like Euphoria on HBO, so like it's totally possible. Because Degrassi is going to be on HBO as well, so hopefully that's a part of the process. Like them renewing it. Hopefully they have some sort of guarantee that they'll get him at least a little bit for it.
Yeah, he's executive producer for Euphoria, and Euphoria, you could tell, has like a little touch of Degrassi in it too. So you could see that kind of, like, a lot of people say, kind of see the similarities between those two shows. But one thing I wanted to ask Amanda before we get into like the episode, and you choosing this episode, one I wanted to ask you, it's like a two-part question. Were you watching Degrassi actively when this episode like first premiered? And two, what was your feelings of the Jimmy Brooks character going into this episode?
So yeah, I was actively watching this episode, and I mean, this is an episode that stands out to anybody that's been in high school, just because it's dealing with the school shooting. And you see Jimmy, and you see his character develop as like, he's a popular kid. And you see him taking Rick like kind of under his wing and like kind of protecting him, especially against Spinner, who's his best friend, and he's standing up for him. So you do see this growth, but then, and you feel so bad when Spinner and I forget the other guy's name.
Jay
are in the washroom and they set him up. And you're just like, oh my God, please don't let. I remember watching it and I was like, oh my God, if this actually happens. And then it did.
Yeah. And they also like tease that he's not gonna do it. Like at first he seems pretty dead set on doing the school shooting, and then he talks to a few people. Like Paige walks up to him, and she's like, hey, I know we've been fucking with you and everything, but like this is like, we didn't want this to happen, and like and he tried to kiss Emma, and like she rejected him, and like. It just kind of like a few really bad things kind of happen in between him deciding he's not going to do it. And then like goes to the washroom, he's getting cleaned off, and that's when they set him up. And it's Jay's idea, but Spinner goes along with it. And then he decides to do it right after that, thinking that Jimmy set the entire thing up. So Jimmy, the only guy out of that friends group who had changed his mind on Rick and like actually was standing up for him at that point, he's the one who takes the fall for everybody, which was That was scary too. I remember being in high school, sitting there by myself at home watching the episode, and like he actually shot Jimmy. I was like, no way,
Yes.
like
Yeah.
no way, they're actually doing this in this show right now. Because this was also pre JT getting stabbed. Like there was a few big moments in the show that people often talk about, but this was like, I mean, it added that extra level of like, you really didn't see that in teen shows ever up to that point. Something like an actual school shooting being shown on the show. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I mean, being Canadian, obviously we have a lot of bullies. We're not a perfect country, but like being Canadian, we don't have school shootings. We've had in our whole history since like 1975 till now, I think we've had 8 school shootings. And like, so for us, for that to be touched on by a Canadian show, I thought was a really big step for Canada, because like it is something that happens. We can't just turn a blind eye because, oh, we're Canadian, this doesn't happen here. It's happening everywhere. It's something that needs to be talked about, especially with bullying. So for me, I thought that was a really important episode, being a Canadian show.
Yeah, that actually adds to it, and like Jensen said, they're like the soap opera type of like teen dramas touched on it, but they never gave it like real consequence. Like the only one I can like really remember that kind of did a school shooting was like One Tree Hill, but the shooter was the only one who really got like shot, and it was like a consequence to it. And with this one, not only did the shooter get shot, but Jimmy's in a wheelchair for the rest of the series. Sean is just mentally broken down because he's the one that has to make the save and save the day. Emma's broken down and totally veers left completely after this episode.
Yeah, she starts hanging out with Jay in the ravine shortly after this.
Exactly.
Those bracelets, yeah.
Exactly. Like everyone is affected in different ways out of this. That's why it's such an impactful episode. And probably in a lot of people's minds, it's like the best episode of Degrassi ever.
Definitely. I would say so, just because it is the most meaningful and impactful show, especially to a younger audience of that age. It's something that we hear about all the time. We don't necessarily see it because nobody's portraying it. So it was definitely the most important episode, I think.
Yeah, and to your point, SP3, about changing characters, not only did it put Jimmy in the wheelchair, it also like forced him to kind of pivot the stuff that he was passionate about, because he couldn't play basketball anymore. He could play wheelchair basketball, but like he didn't have the same feeling about that. Like his dad was kind of like trying to push him towards continuing to play basketball, but he was really discovering he was more of like an artist and like a musician and like all this other stuff. So like, yeah, that's a good point you made about how this actually had consequences. And most shows up to this point, you're right, a lot of the time it would be like none of the main characters would get affected by something like this, and this actually did change the trajectory of like the actual characters on the show, which was, yeah, this is a huge moment. Like I said, the 2 moments I think that most Degrassi fans think of when you ask them like, what are your main memories from this show? I think the 2 moments most people look at is Jimmy getting shot and JT getting stabbed, because it like was 2 things that happened to 2 main characters that like drastically changed like the trajectory of the show.
Absolutely. I totally agree with those. And I didn't even bring up one of the main characters that this had to change after this was Spinner, because he had to go on a whole basically 2-season redemption arc after this. Had to go through Friendship Club and everything. So yeah, this had a ripple effect for the rest of the series. And why, in a lot of people's minds, like a lot of people will say season 4 is their favorite season. I like other seasons more, but definitely if I was to give the argument for season 4, it would come down to this episode.
Yeah. Yeah. And Spinner. Yeah, that was, I've said it before on the show. If I was Jimmy, I would have never forgiven Spinner for being involved in that. Like,
oh my god, no.
but
how would you forgive somebody for that?
I know. Like you. And here's the thing: he can't ever know exactly what that conversation was like, but he knows for sure Spinner went along with whatever the plan was, and that got him shot. So like, so it's and then because same with Jay. Like Jay winds up being like friends with all these people eventually, and winds up like I think it's heavily implied he marries Manny by the end of the series and all this stuff. And like, I don't know, it's just funny, like how that's maybe a downside of y'all in Canada, Amanda, is like maybe a little too forgiving. Like, I don't know if the message should be like, I'm all for forgiveness, but like, I don't know if like you get shot and paralyzed, if like you should forgive that guy who did that.
Yeah,
Basically, basically, Jensen's saying that the message he got is Canadians are the nicest people ever.
They really are. I mean, they're way more trustworthy than Americans, I think. I think a lot of people there probably feel safe, leaving maybe their car door unlocked in most areas, and you don't do that around here. At least where I'm from, same with you in New York, SP3. Like we're in Atlanta in New York, so like it's pretty rare that anybody just like leaves their car. Basically, if you leave your car unlocked where I'm from, and someone like steals stuff out of your car, you're not a victim to most people. It's just like you're an idiot for not locking your car. But
we're not like Pleasantville over here. We do have crime and we do have bad things happen all the time.
But like
we don't leave our doors unlocked.
but just like my point really more so is like basing off you saying like in a perfect world there'd be 0 school shootings, obviously, but you said there's maybe like 8 in like the history of Canada or whatever.
Yeah, I researched. Oh yeah.
Oh man, I can't. There's probably been some this year that we just don't even talk about because like it's just like almost.
Yeah.
It's so sad that it's like as common as it is that like you just hear it and you're like, well, there's another one. We got to talk about gun laws and whether or not people should have guns. And at the end of the day, it's like I don't know how we fix the problem, but for whatever reason, like it's way worse here than it is. I mean, y'all are connected to us. Like, how can it be that much different between you and us when it comes to this kind of stuff? I know y'all going through some other stuff right now too, though.
Oh my god! Yeah.
I just kind of see little snippets on the news of kind of. So I know Canada isn't perfect, and y'all have problems going on there as well. But, but yeah, I don't know. In general, I feel like Canadians are friendlier and more trustworthy than Americans are. That's just the feeling that I get. Do you think you feel the same, SP3? I mean, being American, you think Canadians are probably nicer people overall?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I have family from Canada, so I know like they're very nice individuals. So yeah, that's the message that comes across a lot in Degrassi in general, with a lot of friendships being forgiven for a lot of stuff that I've stopped talking to people for.
Yeah, well, and here's the thing: they all cheat on each other. I don't know if that's a Canadian thing, but like on Degrassi,
that's like a high school thing.
No, I know. I'm just kidding. But that's something we talk about a lot here on the show. Is no matter who you're talking about, even the most wholesome of wholesome characters on this show, even like Liberty Van Zandt, like all of them on the show cheat on somebody throughout the series. So like nobody is like a squeaky clean, like perfect character.
No.
But it also, I mean, to be fair, like you said, Amanda, that really is more of a high school thing. Like that's pretty common just in high school in general. Like you date people and like you're not really in love with them, and like you're
young, you're dumb.
Yeah. So yeah, but then again, if you got me shot, like I'm not going to be hanging out with you ever again, or
never.
So.
Never.
So I did take the liberty here, pun intended, of going to Wikipedia and going to look up Degrassi Time Stand Still, so we can talk about kind of different parts of the 2-part episode here. So I have the this is just from Wikipedia, so I can't stand by if any of this is correct, all of it, but I will know because I watched this episode enough times. It says here, part 1. A full year after his abuse sent his girlfriend Terry into a coma, Rick is still being bullied by the students of Degrassi, including Spinner, Jay, and Jimmy. Rick, however, has made friends with Toby and Emma and develops a crush on the latter. He also becomes a contestant on the popular school trivia show Whack Your Brain with Toby and Emma. That was another thing I wanted to ask Amanda is, not just your feelings on Jimmy Brooks before these episodes, but Rick Murray, the person who abused, Terry in season 3 and that whole story. And then when he's reintroduced into season 4, what was your feelings on him and how he was treated by the students of Degrassi?
Well, I haven't watched the show since I was in high school, which was so long ago. So I completely forgot about the whole Terry abuse thing. But I mean, you see that he's crying for help. He goes to the principal's office. You see that he's clearly being bullied. It is an issue where teachers, principals don't really take it as seriously as they should, and resulting in what happened. But also, one of the things that really bugged me was pinning it on Emma, just because she was nice to him, and then he manifested it into whatever he thought that was, just a little from just being simply nice and thinking that she loved him. And then when he tries to kiss her and she says no, then he's blaming it on her.
Yeah. Yeah, that was super uncomfortable because he gets in so close that she gets like the yellow paint on her clothes. And I'm like, oh, this is just not and here's at the end of the day, to be honest, if I was looking at this from like a realistic standpoint, and maybe once again, this is just to like the friendliness of Canadians or like the goodwill that they have in each other. If you went to my school basically and like you were known as the reason that like one of our friends, like if some girl at the school doesn't go to this school anymore and she's in a coma because you were hitting her, like there's no way you'd ever be let back into that school. Like, it doesn't matter, like, how much you're trying to change, all this stuff. Like, you are expelled. Like, there were kids from my high school that got expelled for much less than what, Rick had done to Terry. So that was one thing that I always thought was a little strange was, like, the situations they'd put some of these kids in where it's like, yeah, I get the message of forgiveness and people changing and stuff, but there's also, like, certain things that I feel like you don't need to, I feel like if you don't like Rick because of what he was doing to Terry, like you don't have to. He's not owed an apology by those people, in my opinion. You know what I mean?
No, and that's like another thing. Like, there's consequences in Canada. Like, we're not allowed to like go around and beat people, and then we're like, oh, it's okay. He's Canadian. He gets a pass.
Sure.
No. In real life, if a kid was beating another student, they would definitely be expelled.
Yeah. So the person I felt the worst for, to be honest, during all this was Rick's mom, because she's like so proud of him for like making friends finally. But that was the thing with him, was like he just had, I hate to say it, he just kind of had a screw loose. Like there was something about his mentality where it was like he would, with Terry, obviously all the aggression and hitting her and all that stuff and everything that led to. And then the Emma thing, like her just being nice to him, like this switch goes off where like, oh, she must be in love with me. Jimmy's like just basically not bullying him anymore. Not really being his friend, but just not even bullying him. And he's like telling his mom, like, me and Jimmy are best friends. And like, he it's like he really like went from like 0 to 100 in like all these situations, like there was something off about that.
He takes the smallest form of sincerity and like blows it up into this big thing and makes it into a lot bigger than it really intends to, when it's really empathy or sympathy a lot of the time. So
Emma's like, I pitied you. And then he's like, oh, you pitied me, I'm going to shoot you. It's like, what? Like, how did that happen?
Like the one thing I think they could have done is talk a little bit more about his home life to kind of give him the reason, because like I feel like there was something there, because we don't know what happened to his father. You see the type of relationship his mother, where she's very like coddling him and stuff like that. There was more there where they could have gone a little bit more episodes before we eventually get here. We were always going to get here, but we could have gone maybe a few more episodes where we just see him at home to kind of explain. And then we got sympathy on him by the kids of Degrassi kind of going overboard with the bullying. Like, it was one thing to be mad that he's here and what he did to Terry, but they went overboard with like throwing him in the trash and all that other stuff. But that got him sympathy, but you couldn't 100% get sympathy on him as a viewer if you remember what he did to Terry. So that, I feel if they focus more on the home life, it would have gave him that further sympathy for the fans.
I also think it's the timing. Like back then, nobody really talked about mental health. If they were to do this episode now, the mental health would have been played in a lot more as to why there was the shooting. You would have seen that backstory of because you're right, there was definitely a screw loose with him, you could tell. So I think that would have also been a focus of the story if they did the episode nowadays.
Yeah, and to your point earlier about like the principal Radich and like not do anything about it. I think now a lot more of the blame, obviously the majority of the blame goes on Rick, for doing it, but I think a lot more of the blame would have went on the adults who all saw this. Even Snake, who didn't have anything to do with this, was like, when he's talking to Radich after it happens, he's like, all the signs were there. He kept coming to you. No one did anything about it. And it's like, well, Snake didn't do anything about it either, but like, what was he supposed to do? Like, he went, like, this guy was going to the principal multiple times, and the principal, his excuse was like, well, I have like 1,000 students to look after. So like, what's one bad kid? This is just, it basically made it sound like it's inevitable that stuff like this is just going to eventually happen every now and then. And it's like, in Snake's, like, this was completely avoidable. And I think a lot of the blame would have went on the parents in like 2022 of the people being like, all these adults are all admitting that like they saw signs in this and just no one did anything about it.
Yeah, they did like a little bit of like a tease of another school shooting story on Degrassi next class, but like Amanda said, they focus more on the mental health of the person, and you saw like the steady breakdown of it was Miles Hollingsworth's brother Hunter, and you saw like him making like a kill list, and he got the gun and he went to school, and like Miles had to like kind of like talk him down from it, and he didn't do it. So they did that more where they focused there. I wish they could have blended both of these together, and it would have fleshed everything out a little bit more. But let's continue with this Wikipedia description. I'm sure we're gonna find a mistake soon. Rick gets revenge on Spinner and Jay by spray painting an X on the door of both of their cars. Spinner, Jay, Alex, and Sean meet up and discuss the incident. Spinner wants to tell Principal Radish, though Sean reminds him that if they tell Radish, he's going to want to know why Rick vandalized their cars. Spinner changes his mind, but assures his revenge on Rick. So I almost forgot this part. You guys have seen this episodes recently. I hadn't, but I almost forgot that he did do the X on the car. What was y'all feelings on those scenes there?
I didn't think it was like as bad as it, like, if he wrote like a comment or like a nasty word on the car, but like just like an X on the door, I was just like, does that warrant what you just did? I don't really know. I don't think so.
Yeah. That's kind of it's similar years later when they do the story with Fitz and Eli, where like they're going back and forth, and there's multiple times that one or the other could have easily just like squashed the beef, but like instead of like actually apologizing and just getting over it, they would always retaliate again, and it just kept escalating and escalating. With this, it was kind of the same thing where it's like, if you're Rick, I think there's part of you that has to be like, all right, I get why I'm getting treated like this. I mean, I put their friend into a coma. I'm the one trying to like change and make good and like get, but at the same time, he also needs to kind of stand up for himself too, because if he doesn't do something, it's probably just going to keep getting worse and worse and worse. And the X's, like you said, Amanda, nothing like that serious, especially because they also mention almost immediately that they can just like wash it off their car with water like really easily. Like it wasn't like they were like some like permanent, irreplaceable type thing they did.
Or like they didn't scratch it into the car.
Exactly.
Right. Like, true. Yeah, they could have keyed it. But I honestly, and I'm glad you brought up that point, SP3, about like they did contemplate just going to the principal about it right then. And if they would have done that, I mean, who knows how he would have reacted, considering he basically just told Rick something along the lines of like, yeah, like figure out how to get along. I don't care. He might have said the same thing to Spinner and been like, y'all just figure it out amongst yourselves. But there's also the chance that if he goes to the principal, then the principal takes it seriously. And he's like, okay, that same kid who came to my office was talking about this. He's the one who did that to these kids. There must be a good reason why he's like retaliating. Like, what are these kids actually doing to bully this kid to begin with? And maybe that leads to the trickle down of like, it's just fixing the problem. But of course, Sean's going to want to, handle it in the streets. You know, Jay is the same kind of way. Spinner's just, you know, Spinner just doesn't know what to do because he constantly changes throughout the whole show. He's like a chameleon where, like, depending on what's going on.
He's like a Big Show. He goes,
exactly.
No one had more face and heel turns than Spinner Mason.
For sure. And he's like a chameleon, you know, it's like when you're, you know, one day he's got the half shaved, half long haircut thing, and he's hanging out with Jay, and he's like this badass or whatever. And then the next thing you know, he's with Friendship Club, and he's got like the nice haircut. He's all clean cut, and he's hanging out with the little good Christian group, or whatever. We got 2 Jews on the show, by the way, today. So me and Amanda. So, you know, shout out to Drake. We were talking about him today. He's Jewish as well. And I think Spinner is as well. His last name's Kipple, which sounds very Jewish to me.
Yeah, Shane.
Yeah. So, but anyways, that all being said, that's a good point. Is like, so it's like on one hand, Rick, I get why he's trying to stand up for himself, but he also is just making it worse by like continuing it by because basically an X means like a target as far as I'm concerned. Like, you put an X on my car, like what are you doing? Like, you coming after me? Like, now I've got to retaliate again because now you've told me you're going to attack me, basically. So, but on one hand, I wish Rick would have just kind of taken the bullying, and then, like, because I'm not saying it's good to bully people, but in this particular scenario, he did deserve it. And I think that had he just stayed the course and just dealt with the bullying a little bit longer and not retaliated, Jimmy was already coming around on being a friend of his. And if he could have got Jimmy on his side, I think eventually everybody else would have really softened up a lot more and not been nearly as bad on Rick. The more that he became friends with like Jimmy and Emma and Toby and like some of these characters that were like really well liked by everybody, maybe that would have been his chance of like the bullying ending. People probably would have never liked him, but he probably would have stopped getting thrown in trash cans and stuff.
At the very least. There. It says now, due to his intelligence, especially in sports, Jimmy is placed on the Whack Your Brain team by Archie Simpson after one of the contestants gets sick with mono. Both Jimmy and Rick detest Archie's decision, and Rick attempts to convince Radish to get Jimmy off the team. Rick is quickly dismissed by Radish, who claims Rick should try to make a better relationship with Jimmy. Rick is discouraged by this, but he and Jimmy soon start to get along. Meanwhile, Joey, struggling with financial troubles, is attempting to sell his house to Craig's dismay. When Joey's real estate agent can't get the house sold, Craig decides to call Joey's ex-girlfriend, Sydney, who is an enterprise in real estate. Though Joey is upset with Sydney's reappearance, Greg believes Sydney will sell the house for good money. During the open house, Caitlin comes back from Africa and asks why Sydney's name is on the lawn. I totally forgot this side mission that they did here with Joey and his house. But first, what did y'all think with we've been talking about it with Radish kind of just blowing off Rick after Jimmy is put on the team? But they start to get along because, you know, Jimmy knows his sports, Rick knows everything else. They make a good team with the Whack Your Brain team there, Amanda.
I mean, that I agree with Radish. Like, if you're on a team, doesn't matter your outside opinions, you should just work together. So I do agree that he did the right thing in pushing Rick to just work as a team with Jimmy. That sense, I do think that he was right. And yeah, you can't have it all such a heavy episode. You need a little lightness with Joey and Caitlin and Sydney.
Yeah, that whole thing where so I don't like Caitlin at all, but like this was during the time where she was okay. But like she was such a polarizing character for me, and like, but it was cool that it was cool and weird how this all happens, because like Joey can't afford his house anymore. Craig gets Sydney, who is Joey's ex-girlfriend. Like, so like your essentially a stepson, half son. I'm not sure. Stepson. Your stepson reached out to your ex-girlfriend to sell your house for you, and now your current girlfriend has bought your house from your ex.
There was a lot of acknowledgement of season 3 in this episode, because in season 3, like I think like the first half of the season is kind of devoted to this side storyline of this love triangle between Joey, Sydney, and Caitlin. And longtime fans of Degrassi wanted Joey and Caitlin to be together. They like the iconic couple from Degrassi High. They wanted them to finally get together. They get together. They're all doing well. And then, Caitlin with her job has to go away. So you don't really get any of them really together for a lot of like the end of season 3 into season 4. And then you get this. It was kind of like, oh, let's just throw this in. So everybody from Degrassi is in town when this tragic incident happens.
That's right, because her job is to report the news.
Yeah.
And so she's right there, and she's like gets on the scene real quick to see what's going on at the school. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think that was like another reason why they just had to add them in here. At the televised Whack Your Brain show, the Degrassi team is tied with Northern High School. For the final round, the team chooses Rick to go up. Rick ends up beating Northern, thus winning the game. While Rick celebrates his win on stage, Spinner, Jay, and Alex prank Rick by pouring a bucket of yellow paint and feathers on him in front of the audience. The audience laughs, humiliating Rick. Leaving school in shock, Rick is approached by Emma, who hands him the trophy and assures him he's the smartest guy in school. Rick kisses Emma. Emma is disgusted and angrily states she only befriended Rick because she felt pity for him. Dejected, Rick goes home and discovers his parents are not there. He pulls out a box from a drawer, opens it, and finds his father's gun.
Yeah, and that's the end of that episode there. It's like that's how the episode ends. And I remember that when it aired originally and being like, next week he's going to shoot the school. Oh my God. Like,
because all you see is like the stills. I remember it. Like all you saw is like the stills, and with the gun in the school. You saw him approaching Jimmy. You saw him approaching Sean and Emma. That's all you really saw. So you didn't know who he shot. You didn't know what he did. It was like crazy.
Yeah, it was quite the cliffhanger.
Oh my God. Yeah. So all that stuff leading to it. I mean, that. They even explain it like when Rick's in the bathroom, which we'll talk about in a second for I guess the next episode of this, but like even the way that they explain it, they're like, yeah, the way that Jimmy missed all those easy sports questions, and good thing we got he convinced Rick to be the one to do the final round, because like then that's how like we couldn't have done it without Jimmy on the inside is basically like what they say. And it's like, oh my God, like. And what sucks so much about it too is like you can tell throughout the competition, like Rick's getting along with everyone. Like even his enemies are like cheering for him in the audience. They're like clapping because like he's winning it for the school, and like he's actually really impressive, and like with all the stuff he knows, and like he's like feeling good about it and everything. And like when Jay is when he finds out that well, actually, before the paint happens, they're in the bathroom then too, and it's like Jay's like, "Hey, it's all cool. Like, we're good. We're gonna stop messing with you." And so like now Rick's in this headspace of like, I'm making friends. My enemies are cool with me now. I just won this big thing for the school. Like, I'm on top of the world. Like, things are finally getting better. And then the paint and feathers drop on his head, and it's like he goes from like the top of the mountain to like underground like immediately, you know what I mean? Like just crushes him.
And I mean, they did a really good job at even making the audience, like us watching it, forget everything that Rick had done prior, because they put it in that team setting and that he's winning it for the school and everything. So you're like cheering him on just as much as the kids in the audience were. So when it did happen and he gets the paint dumped on him, you feel terrible for this guy who's not really a good guy, but you still feel that empathy and the sympathy and just the complete humiliation that he's going through.
Yeah, especially right after that, like as the paint is like falling on him, like there's like no other audio happening on the show, so you just hear like the splats of paint hitting him and like the feathers, and he's not moving, he's just standing there like in shock. And most of the people in the audience aren't even like, some people start kind of giggling, but most of the people are like, oh man, like they're like, man, this is fucked up. Like, like, you know, like even they feel bad about it at that point. And there's only this, and that's part of it too. That I picked up on is like, there was only a couple laughs in that room, like very few people thought that was funny. Yeah. But in Rick's mind, as he's going through that, all he's hearing is the laugh.
It's the laugh.
You know, yeah. So
those are the loudest. It's like when we watch wrestling, when it's like not that many people, the boos are the louder than the cheers. They echo a little bit louder. That's how it was for Rick, especially in his head. He just heard all the laughs.
Unless it's WWE, they just pipe in whatever sound they want the crowd to make. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. That's what Rick needs. He needs Kevin Dunn in his head. Rick, now the laughingstock of the school, returns to Degrassi, still coated in feathers and paint, with his father's gun concealed in his backpack. Planning to get revenge on his bullies, Rick goes after Paige first. When Paige encounters Rick, she reveals that she thought the prank was sickening and that she is sorry. Rick decides not to take out the gun to shoot her. He apologizes for hurting Terry and leaves. While trying to clean himself up in the bathroom, Spinner and Jay trick Rick into thinking the prank was Jimmy's idea. Rick recommits to revenge. He approaches Jimmy, who is sympathetic towards him, informing him that he has his back if he is bullied further. Rick retorts to Jimmy that he was lying to him all along and only pretending to be his friend. Jimmy is still unaware that Rick thought he set up the prank. Rick pulls out his gun and shoots Jimmy in the back, causing Jimmy to collapse to the floor. His unconscious body is then seen by Craig. So what did you guys think of like the kind of like the juxtaposition from him trying to like approach Paige and Paige kind of diffusing the whole situation, to the bathroom with Spinner and Jay setting up Jimmy, to Jimmy's words kind of going on empty ears? No matter what he had to say to Rick, Rick knew what he wanted to do.
I think the scene with Paige really shows that like one person can make a difference in somebody's life. Like this kid was about to walked into the school planning to kill this girl. And all she simply had to say was that she was sorry and that she thought that it was messed up. And that changed his whole view. Like from what it seemed like, he was going to the bathroom, he was cleaning himself up. Like he's like, okay, they're sorry about this. And then you have Spinner and I forget his name again.
Jay.
Walk in, and then it just completely reverts whatever just happened. And now he's back on his path. But this time it's towards who he thinks was his friend who turned on him.
Yeah, and I think also part of this also shows like how screwed up everyone else thought it was for that to happen to Rick, because Paige is Terry's best friend, and like if she can feel sorry for this guy and like walk up and apologize to this guy, then like he's really getting fucked with, like to the level of like, you know, even the people that have the most reason to dislike Rick actually feel bad for Rick at that point.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I don't know, I don't remember, but like, was that one of the first times that he felt like showed remorse towards Terry by saying sorry?
I believe when he first comes back to school, he like tries, but it's also like he's very defensive about anything they have to say. So they don't really hear what he has to say. But I think like here was where he knew Paige would listen to him, and he kind of got it out finally.
And part of the problem too with Rick at that time was that he was like kind of apologizing throughout the time that he was abusing Terry. So like his apologies was like no one really wanted to hear, because it's like I think I remember too, Terry was like they found out that this was going on, like something was up between those two, but she was always like, no, like he's apologized, like he isn't really like that, blah blah blah. And then like he did it, and it got worse, and she hit her head on the back of the rock and all that stuff. And so at that time especially, I think no matter how much apologizing Rick would have done, they just weren't going to hear it, because it's like, dude, yeah, that's what Terry said too, and like now look where Terry's at. So but this was, I think, the first time that Rick said it, because when he says it to Paige, like this moment we're talking about, you know, Paige immediately just kind of like, she doesn't like accept it, but she's like, she kind of nods and like walks away. But it's the first time that I think that any of the characters did feel that he genuinely did feel bad about the entire thing. And I think that was part of it too, was like, he talks to Paige, and he's able to say he's sorry, and she apologizes, and like, I think that's a part of what leads him to not want to do it anymore too, because he's like, you know what, like that was totally fucked up, like what I did to Terry. I get why these people don't like me. Like, at least the one that hates me the most apologized, and like this whole thing sucks, but I can wash up, I can go home, and like, you know, maybe things will get better. But like, then he hears the conversation in the bathroom from Jay and Spinner, and it's like we've been saying, then the switch just flips again. And now it goes from like, he's not interested in killing, you know, Paige and getting revenge on like Spinner and Jay. Now it's the focus on Jimmy now, because not only was Jimmy bullying him before, now in his mind he has tricked him into being his friend.
Yeah,
and now
just to do this.
Yeah, just to put him in this situation. Exactly.
Yeah, he felt betrayed by Jimmy, so that was like the big difference for him. But continuing on here, we get Rick confronts Toby, Emma, and Sean next in the hallway. Rick is mad at Emma for not reciprocating his feelings and stating that Emma played him and that she has now made his list. Sean tries to talk Rick out of shooting Emma to no avail. When Rick points the gun at Emma, Sean attacks him and tries to point the gun away. They wrestle for the weapon, and during the struggle, it fires into Rick's stomach, killing him.
Yeah, classic.
I will always say, this is Sean Cameron's defining scene of this entire series, is when he does this, because this puts him in a nutshell. Like, he's the loner, but he's brave, but he will always stand up for one person no matter what, and that's Emma. So this really put things back into perspective, because they totally veered off of that in season 3 when he went Slim Shady with Jay and broke up with. Well, he first broke up with Emma because he was with Emma at the start of season 3. Went through his whole bad thing, steals Snake's laptop when he's going through chemotherapy with cancer. Then he eventually gets with that Amy chick who winds up giving head to Jay later on. Then he breaks up with her, and then eventually Ellie starts his redemption, but the redemption arc is finally fulfilled in this moment.
Yeah, very true. Yeah, this was I remember for some reason I remember my brother, like when I watched the show, he thought Degrassi was terrible. He's younger than I am. He just wasn't ever into it. But the only character he liked on the show was Sean Cameron for whatever reason, just because he was like the guy who was like always trying to be like the tough guy or whatever.
Yeah.
And I remember when I watched this years ago, and like we watched this scene of the show, and he was like, oh, of course, like he's the one that killed the bad guy. Like, of all the people, like the badass is the one that kills the guy, you know, in self-defense. But you know, this winds up leading for Sean right after this to like go back to Osage Beach and like reconnect with his family, and then you find out more about his backstory and like kind of how, you know, these stories about Sean and, you know, the things he did in Wasaga, like deafening that kid in that fight and all this stuff. Like, things didn't go exactly how people thought they did for Sean. So you find out a lot more about Sean after this too, but he's treated like this big hero, but in reality, he just wishes like none of this would have ever happened. He doesn't like all the attention he gets after this for like being the hero. Yeah.
Because I mean, regardless that yes, he was a hero, but he's still a child that killed someone. And not just some like a classmate. So that is a lot to deal with for, I would assume, anybody. And that was, I think, another good thing about Degrassi was, yes, they had the school shooting, but they didn't just leave it like a school shooting. The next episode they touched on it. It like lasted for seasons as to what these kids are dealing with.
Yeah, very true. Very true.
Yeah, this eventually leads on a path of Sean joining the army. So, like, this is very much a scene and a moment that gives him consequence for like the rest of this whole series. But next we got, following the incident, the school is put on a lockdown, though most of the students are unaware of what happened. In a classroom, Paige, Ellie, Ashley, and Hazel learn about the shooting. Soon after, Hazel is pulled out of the class and is informed that Jimmy was shot. Meanwhile, Caitlin and Joey, who were initially discussing about Sydney and the house, also learn about the shooting. They quickly arrive at Degrassi, where the students are being released from the school. Caitlin stops news reporters from interviewing the students. Archie yells at Radish for not preventing Rick's bullying. Jay assures Alex that they will be fine and that nobody will find out, but Alex is regretful of her involvement. Spinner, filled with guilt and regret, tells Jay the authorities need to know who did it and how they could have killed Jimmy. Toby and Emma leave the school and are greeted by their parents. Toby discovers that Rick has died. Numerous students, including Emma, Ashley, Sean, Ellie, and Craig, watch the news about the shooting. Paige and Hazel go to the hospital to see Jimmy, and Toby and Emma tearfully embrace at a candlelight visual for Jimmy at Degrassi.
Yeah, heavy stuff, man.
I forgot this whole thing changes Alex too, because Alex stops all that bullying stuff after this and really goes on like the whole path to her redemption too.
And Jay, this was another one of there's a few times throughout this series that Jay says some of like just the coldest stuff I've ever heard on television to people. And this was one of those where he's talking to Spinner, and Spinner's like, they gotta know, like, we gotta kill Jimmy. Like, this is serious. Like, I feel terrible about this, all this. And she's like, Jimmy's my best friend, man. And he's like, well, I think regardless of the outcome, he probably was your best friend. And it's like, yeah, man. Like, thanks for reminding me that he's either, like, if he's alive still, then, like, he probably never gonna like me again, or he might be dead. Yeah. So I guess either way, he probably isn't my best. Like, Jay would say some of the coldest stuff on this show. Like, this, he was the main heel of this show for a while.
Yeah, and I think if it was me, like, even if Jay told me not to say anything to the cops, I don't think I could not go through with it. I would simply just say that I was the one, I said something in a bathroom, nobody else, and take the fall, because I wouldn't be able to live with that hanging on me.
Yeah, especially if he died. I mean, geez. And then, like, when you find out he's alive and he can't walk ever again, you know, because there's a handful of episodes where Spinner hasn't told him yet. And so, like, he's helping Jimmy, and Jimmy doesn't know. But then eventually he does tell him out of guilt. And it's like, and then that's when, like, everything changes, and Spinner, you know, gets shunned from their friends group, and they have to, you know, he has to work his way back in over time and all that stuff. But yeah, this was dark. This whole thing was dark. And then, so I guess, yeah, at the end of this episode, you don't know still what has happened to Jimmy. Like, into, like, is that the end of the episode, SP3, like the candlelight vigil? And that's, yeah. So
it's tough. You get a couple of episodes of Jimmy in the hospital. I think Craig is only the real one that we see, like, most of the scenes with Jimmy in, like, the hospital recovering from all of this. So
he's the one who finds him in the school too. That was another thing that was a little confusing to me when I was watching this yesterday. Was, so Jimmy gets shot and everybody runs the other direction, right? Because, like, someone shot a gun. Yeah. And then they show Toby, Emma, and Sean, and they slowly walk towards the gun. Like, because obviously it's a TV show, and, like, they want to get to the scene of Rick confronting Emma, but, like, and if this was real, they'd be out of there. Like,
they follow everybody else. Yeah, they wouldn't be the only three people who are just, like, stand still. Like, what's going on? What's going on?
Yeah, I found that, like, as a flaw for the whole shooting part. Like, when you look at them in the classroom and they're just kind of like, oh, why are the doors locked? Like, it should have been, like, an announcement, like, get under your desk. Like, it was still 2007, I think the episode aired. Like, so we should know that there's protocol about school shootings. Even though we're in Canada, like, we should know that you go under your desk. You don't just stand there and be like,
Yeah.
I have no idea what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then that's also, we've talked about it on this show before, but the Hazel and Jimmy relationship, like they were together for like forever, and they never really seemed to have a lot in common. And like, I'll just say it because we talked about it before. It really seemed like they were just putting two people of color together in a relationship, like just like to do it. Like they didn't really, because like there's pretty much the moment that like Jimmy became like an actual character and like had his own like personality. They broke the two of them up almost immediately, and he started having relationships with people he had stuff in common with. And it was kind of like that on this episode. It just reminded me of that, where it was like Hazel gets pulled out of the class and all this stuff. And it almost reminded me like, oh yeah, they were a couple. Like, you didn't really pay attention to them as a couple at all. And now it's like, oh, of course Hazel would be like super freaked out by this.
That didn't make sense. Like, how are you on a lockdown, but then somebody's just walking around and like pulls you out of class and be like, hey, by the way,
right,
Jimmy got shot. Like, aren't you either evacuated the school or you're on lockdown?
Exactly. Like,
that's a really good point.
Yeah, a lot of this didn't make a whole lot of sense, but I definitely agree with the whole Hazel and Jimmy thing. Like, yeah, they did not care about that whole, and honestly, they did not care about Jimmy, giving Jimmy too much character before he gets shot. I think like him getting shot is when his character becomes very much interesting on the show. If literally before he gets shot, I think I could say all of his character traits or all of the key moments in like 2 sentences. Like, he plays basketball, he's friends with Spinner, he went out with Ashley and Hazel.
Yeah. It's pretty much it. He got more money than Spinner's family does because Spinner steals his iPod or whatever.
Yes, like, he and his parents work a lot. That's a problem. That's about it with his whole entire character until he gets shot.
Well, and the thing with Hazel was outside of like that one episode where she is like trying to pretend to be Jamaican because she doesn't want people to know that she's Muslim. Like, there's no character for Hazel outside of just being Jimmy's girlfriend. Like, they don't do anything with her, and she's on the show for forever too. So this was probably the most interesting thing she did, to be honest, was like being there for Jimmy after he gets shot. But then when Jimmy like recovers, they break them up pretty quick. Because like I said, once Jimmy has like a character now and stuff to do, they're like, oh, well, we'll have him kind of chasing after Ashley or him dating Ellie or like stuff with like people that he had stuff in common with. And then Hazel just she was there, but she just kind of like became kind of a background character, then just kind of fizzled out completely. So,
she was never really a memorable character ever on the show.
She was mainly just like Paige's good friend and Jimmy's Jimmy's girlfriend and Paige's friend. That was pretty much.
She was Paige's sidekick for a lot of the show. So like, they never really gave her a storyline outside of that one Muslim episode where she had kind of like an identity thing going on, and then they never followed up on it.
Yeah, but this was sad. This was sad stuff. I'll never forget watching this, like, as it aired back in the day. Like, this was super memorable. And also another thing when it comes to Drake, this is still people to this day will call him Wheelchair Jimmy. You know what I mean? Like, I hear people say that all the time, and it's like, that's where this started. For anybody who might not know, or like, you've heard of Drake called Wheelchair Jimmy and all this stuff. He was on a show. Like, this is the episode that started all of that. So, just for whatever it's worth.
Yeah, it's crazy to think that he used to be able to walk around the streets of Toronto, like, just casually, being as, like, just Jimmy. Like, people would only recognize him as Jimmy and not Drake. Now he can't walk around to Toronto anywhere.
No. Oh, I'm sure. Let me ask you this, Amanda, real quick. When you watched the show as it was airing back in the day, who did you think, if you could guess, and don't say Drake, even if that is your answer, but who would you have guessed would have been like the biggest star to come out of this show, given like all like the talented kids that were involved? Because personally, I thought Spinner was going to be like a big star. Like, I just, for whatever reason. And I know like Nina Dobrev has gone on to become pretty famous, and they've had some people that have broken out from the show, but like, who did you think was going to be kind of like a big breakout star from like this cast?
I always thought it was going to be either Spinner or Paige. That was going to be the big ones.
The crazy thing with Paige is if you watch any of her interviews, even like today, that actress Lauren Collins, she sounds just like Paige. Like she isn't as like arrogant as Paige or whatever, but like it's like you're hearing Paige Michael Chuck talking. Like it's funny. She's very similar to the character in a lot of ways.
I wish she could still play the character to this day. That's like one of my favorites. The one I thought would be big was Craig, Jake Epstein.
Yeah,
I thought
especially because of his music. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I forgot. Yeah, he would have been a good one.
Yeah, and he still, I think, is involved in music to some degree. He looks pretty much the same now as he did back then too. A lot of these characters look like you're super recognizable still. When Drake did that I'm Upset video and he brought like all the cast back. Did you watch that, Amanda?
Yeah.
So that was really cool because like so many of them looked just like they did back in high school. Like that was awesome. Mark out moment for me.
Yeah, seeing Rick run down those halls again.
Then the dudes are chasing after him. Yeah, that's awesome. That's so good. And then like Snake is like smoking with Jay and Silent Bob in the office and stuff. It's like, yeah, that was wild.
Only thing I was disappointed in is that Drake didn't do one of these moves.
Oh man.
If he would have made that a dance move, that would have been great.
I wonder if they'll ever try to do something like that again. Like get everyone. I mean, hopefully for this reboot, we see something like that. Like
I think so because like
yeah.
Besides Drake, who's massively famous right now, but everybody else that I follow on social media, they all seem like they keep in touch. I mean, they all still live in Toronto, so they probably see each other all the time. So I definitely think they would do something like that, especially if Drake asked them. Who's saying no to Drake?
Right. Well, that's funny because the big like controversy of the I'm Upset video was JT not being involved, and what I heard, I saw like other cast members talking about it. He got invited to go to do the music video, but he was so sure that it was a prank. Like he was like, why would like Drake? Like there's no way Drake's like bringing us in for a Degrassi music video. Like there's no way this is real. So he just didn't reply to it. Like cause he literally thought it was a fake, like someone just messing with him. And I think they were saying like the cast, like once they all got together and realized he wasn't there, they started trying to like FaceTime him and stuff to like prove like this was actually a real thing that was happening. But that would have been epic because he was one of my favorite characters, and like him, that was another one where like seeing somebody get killed off of the show, like that was wild for a show like this. Like we had seen the shooting that we're talking about now, but then they took it a step farther later on and actually killed someone off, which is that's heavy stuff when you're watching this as a teenager. Like I remember watching a lot of this stuff from like my dorm room, my freshman year of college, like sitting there in my dorm room by myself with my laptop in my little corner because I didn't want my friends to know I was even watching this show. And I'd be so invested. I remember when JT got stabbed, just being like, oh my God, I want to talk to people about this, but like none of my friends watch this show. But yeah, good times, good memories.
Mm-hmm.
And here we are some 15 years later being able to talk about it.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Wild.
Well, Amanda, anything else you want to get off your chest from Degrassi before we get out of here? Anything, any closing words? And then afterwards we'll get you, plug your stuff and we'll get on out of here.
No, I got nothing. It's like weird because like Degrassi seems like, I know in the show it seems like it's such a big school. It's like really not a big school. Like my high school was about like 4 times the size of Degrassi.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah. I had a huge high school.
Is that like a physical building you could go like visit right now? Is it still intact?
Yep.
I
think it's still it's the school.
So it's an actual physical, like a school that people actually do use for school.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
What?
I didn't know that.
I didn't know that either.
If you guys ever come to Toronto, I'll take you on a Degrassi tour.
Yeah, I'm down. That sounds
so down.
Next time we have a wrestling event, if that ever happens.
Ooh,
but
that's very tempting. I wonder how many people a day just like show up. Like, kids are like actually just going to school and there's people just outside like taking pictures of the outside of the school and stuff.
Probably not as much as you think, because again, like anybody that lives in Toronto, it's just like,
right.
It's just another high school.
True. It's funny because like in the US in I guess around this in like Arizona where they did Breaking Bad, I know a lot of people like they'll do Breaking Bad tours because like because it is real houses and stuff that they used. And that just sounds kind of similar where like, you know, if you were in town as a tourist and you were a Degrassi fan, people probably go by and they're like, oh, I got to stand here because I remember like this is where, you know, so-and-so broke up with so-and-so on the show. Yeah. And like people do that with Breaking Bad where they'll like, oh, this is the scene where this or that happened. They take pictures like in front of it or whatever. But I am 100% down.
I'm down.
Oh yeah, I'm down. No, like seriously, if there is a big reason to go to Toronto, especially if there's like a big AEW show up there, that would really tempt
Please
me.
make that happen. I need somebody to make this happen.
Yes,
for real.
AEW, yeah. So Tony Khan, when you see this,
yes, because we know you're a Degrassi fan.
We know.
Watching, yes, 100%.
He's around our age, so that's where it makes sense. He would be watching.
How funny would that be if he was a fan of this show and he did want to come talk about it?
He could come on a tour too. I'll show him around.
Oh my god, us and Tony Khan just hanging out and hanging out at Degrassi Community School. That'd be great.
Talking about when Emma went to the ravine.
Oh yeah, like oh yeah, just bring up like the worst stuff about the show.
Oh god.
Yeah, Tony's like, oh yeah, man, Stu's rule.
Were you Team Ashley or Team Manny?
Yeah. Oh yeah, Downtown Sasquatch is my favorite band ever.
Three tenors for life.
3 tenors for life. That's a good way to end the show. But thank you, Amanda, for joining us. This was awesome. Happy to have a old school Degrassi fan and an authentic Canadian on the show here today to talk about the show with us. Please let everybody know where they can find you.
You can follow me on Twitter at KFabulous or on Instagram, Amanda_KFabulous.
There you go. I just started an Instagram account for one of the podcasts that I do. I'm gonna actually follow you on there now too, because I gotta find people to follow on Instagram. So I will be following Amanda right after this show. Y'all should follow her too on Instagram and on Twitter. KFabulous on Twitter. And yeah, if you like pro wrestling, Amanda's a big pro wrestling fan. She does like reactions and stuff like that on are you gonna be doing that tonight for Raw? I know this is gonna air on Friday, but
yeah, I'll be done for Raw. It'll be boring, but I'll be there.
Yeah, well, I have a reason to watch WWE for the first time in forever because, like, I don't think that Cody is the Miz's thing. I think that's going to be Logan Paul. I'm pretty sure of it. But if there's any chance of Cody coming to WWE, I'm going to be watching WWE because I am a massive Cody Rhodes
Seth
fan.
Rollins is going to cut a promo and Cody Rhodes is going to interrupt.
That's possible.
No.
I could see it possibly happen. I just want Cody to figure things out and come back to AEW at the end of the day. But
that's exactly what he's doing.
I hope so. I really hope so. And as you can see, I've got my Stardust mask ready just in case. So yeah, thanks again, Amanda, for joining us. And
anytime.
Me and SP3 will be right back with you for those of you watching live. All right, cool. So we can just edit. All right, I got to figure out how to take this other screen away. I don't know how to. Can you hear me, SP3?
Yes, I can.
Okay, cool. I do not know how to remove. Maybe. Oh, there we go.
There you go. I was like, I was gonna.
It also didn't know when the video cut off. I was like, oh yeah, I don't know how much farther we went recording. You could hear me like, yeah, we'll edit like this or that. Oh, okay. Well, all right, y'all. Well, that was great. Thank you again to Amanda for joining us on the show. Make sure to follow her on Twitter at KFabulous. And me and SP3. Oh, we got a super chat. Thank you very much, Bored Dude. And I've been seeing you in the chat. Obviously, that was pre-recorded. Yes. This right now is live. Bored Dude 630 says Degrassi is Toronto and Breaking Bad is Albuquerque, New Mexico. Just had to say, being here in Albuquerque, big ups to Degrassi dudes. Yes, you are right. It's funny because right when I was rewatching that just now, and I said Arizona, I almost typed in the chat, I meant New Mexico. Like I was definitely wrong about that, and I'm disappointed because Breaking Bad is like one of my favorite shows ever. But it was absolutely Albuquerque, New Mexico. You were totally right about that.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you're a Degrassi fan that you found our podcast.
Yes, thank you, board dude. Yeah, I was just trying to interact with you in the chat. I saw a couple of your comments. I love when I see some genuine Degrassi fans in the chat talking. He was like I can remember the episode just as you're talking about it. That was great because as I'm reading it, I was like seeing the scenes in my head. So I do agree with you, board dude, and we appreciate the support, man.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know I saw Maggie in here. Maggie, if you're still here, hello. Eric said Spinner is my guy. Same here, Eric. Spinner's my guy as well. We did a Degrassi tier list if you missed it, where we ranked all of the characters, and you can find that right here on Fightful Overbooked if you want to check that out. And Spinner is my Degrassi goat, the Degrassi goat for SP3 is Manny Santos. So we actually wound up having another episode last week where we debated who is the best character between Spinner and Manny. So if you're a Spinner fan, you got a couple good episodes you can catch up on if you missed it. Frantic World, I've been seeing you in here all chat as well. I'm going to watch the Pam and Tommy. I'm going to binge that whole thing after they're done airing each episode. But thanks to everybody who's here today. We really appreciate it. Love seeing all the Degrassi fans in here, and we're kind of growing our little Degrassi community here at Degrassi Dudes. If you want to follow us over here in about 5 minutes or so, me and SP3 on both of our Twitch channels. I put the links in the description or in the comments. The first time it got all scrambled, I think, but the second two have the link. So it's twitch.tv/fight talk_ and twitch.tv/true heel heat wrestling. If you go to either of those Twitch channels, me and SP3 will be there dual streaming, and we will be showing Time Stand Still episodes 1 and 2. So all the stuff that we just talked about, we will watch together over there on Twitch. So join us literally in like 5 minutes or so. We're just going to grab something to drink, walk around for a second, and be right back here on Twitch. So once again, the links are in the description, and we will also make sure you're following both of us on Twitter, SP3 at True Heel Heat SP3. Sorry, True Heel SP3. And then I am Fight Talk _ If you're following us, we will also put links on Twitter here in a minute. So like you can just click those links and jump right into the Twitch streams. So SP3, any closing words before we jump on over to Twitch?
Want to thank Amanda. She was amazing. I'm really hoping AEW has a Toronto pay-per-view so we can do a Degrassi community school tour, because I'm very much looking forward to that. And that was a great conversation, great chat we had earlier in the week. So much appreciation to her. Much appreciation to everyone in the chat and everyone watching. If you haven't watched the previous episodes, like Jensen said, watch that. If it's your first time watching, join us every Friday, 10 a.m. Eastern time, right here, Fightful Overbooked. Myself, Jensen, talking about Degrassi. We're slowly but surely bringing in special guests. So talking to Degrassi with people who mix it up in the wrestling media world, as well as maybe even professional wrestlers will be on here. You never know what you're going to see on Degrassi Dudes.
Maybe even characters from Degrassi. Like we're targeting some potential there. So don't know if and when that will happen, but we are trying to get some actual Degrassi characters potentially to join us on this show to talk about Degrassi, which would be absolutely epic.
Yes.
So that all said, we will see y'all on Twitch here shortly. And then once again, make sure you're following us on Twitter, because if you can't use the links in the comments for whatever reason, or you exit out of YouTube, we're going to be putting the links right here on our Twitter in just a matter of minutes, and we'll be watching Time Stand Still episodes 1 and 2. So I hope that y'all follow us over and join us for that. It'll be a lot of fun just to kick back, relax, and watch some Degrassi together. So we'll see y'all in a few minutes over on Twitch.